If you'd told me 3 months ago that I'd be staring at an empty driveway at 2 a.m., whispering my wife's name into the wind, I would have laughed. Not because I thought it was impossible, but because I never imagined I'd be the last to know my own story. Caleb. I called into the silence. No answer. My wife, Valerie, had been calm that morning. A little too calm. We'd kissed goodbye like always, her lips grazing my cheek with the same routine affection she'd honed after a decade of marriage. Nothing seemed out of place. No hints. No warning signs. Well, none that I let myself notice. That night, she said he'd be home by 6. Late meeting, she texted. I made dinner anyway. Chicken Alfredo, his favorite. At 7, I poured myself a drink. At 8, I checked the clock again. 9? I was pacing the living room like a man waiting for a storm to pass, but the eye of it was already inside my house. At 10, I called his cell. Straight to voicemail. At midnight, I stood in the garage, staring at the car he didn't take. Mine was still there. His? Gone. That's when the dread started whispering. You know that voice, the one that sounds like your own, but with too much clarity. It said, something's off. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, opened the closet. Nothing missing. Not a single shirt or suitcase. So where was he? At 5 a.m., with the TV still humming in the background, I called the police. Ma'am, the dispatcher said. He probably got drunk. Happens all the time. Call us tomorrow if he's still missing. Tomorrow. That was a luxury I didn't have. I didn't sleep. Not really. You don't when your husband vanishes and all you've got are worst-case scenarios and a half-empty glass of rum. At 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. 2 patrolmen stood on my porch. Their faces said what their mouths hadn't yet. Mrs. Mancino, the taller one, asked, We've located a car registered to you and Caleb Mancino. Is he home? No, I replied. He never came home last night. I called this morning. They told me to wait until tomorrow. I was talking fast now. The kind of fast that sounds a lot like panic with a code of politeness. His voice dropped. His car was pulled from the ocean earlier this evening. No bodies were recovered. Divers will resume the search tomorrow. I dropped to my knees right there in the hallway. It wasn't grief. Not yet. It was uncertainty, the kind that hollows you out like termites under hardwood. They asked me questions. Innocent enough, until they weren't. Where were you yesterday afternoon? At work, I said. Same place I've been for the last 10 years. Any problems in the marriage? No, I snapped, too loud. Too quick. One officer raised an eyebrow. Do you know anyone who might want to hurt your husband? I hesitated. And that hesitation? That's the moment I realized something. They weren't looking for a missing man. They were looking for a suspect. And I was on the list. What they didn't know, and what I hoped no one ever would, was that I hadn't exactly been the picture of loyalty. But in my head, it had never mattered. A little excitement here and there. Behind the steel doors of a classified government building where secrets went to die. Nobody got hurt. At least, that's what I used to believe. Until Caleb went missing. Until his car was found upside down in the ocean like the truth trying to crawl back to the surface. By the next morning, the story had made the rounds. Local news ran the footage of Caleb's car being hauled from the water, hood crumpled, windshield shattered, seaweed draped like some kind of oceanic reef. The anchor's voice was sterile and professional, but all I heard was no body recovered. No body, which meant no closure. And a mind like mine? It fills in the blanks. I was back at work the next day, not because I was composed, but because staying home meant staring at the doorway and hoping a ghost walked in. At the office, people were polite. You know the kind of polite that tastes like pity and suspicion mixed in a cocktail glass? That one. Valerie, said Denise from HR, if there's anything you need. Like what? I asked. A new husband? She blinked. Awkward silence. I smiled. Just joking. I wasn't. I caught my reflection in the mirrored panel by the break room. Hair perfect. Lipstick solid. Eyes hollow. That's when I realized I looked like a grieving wife, or a guilty one. Later that afternoon, I walked into the restroom and overheard 2 junior analysts whispering. Do you think he's dead? They say no body was found. Could have staged it. You think she knows more than she's letting on? A pause. Well, she works in that secure division, right? You don't just go missing when your wife works with secrets. My heels clicked against the tile as I walked out of the stall. Their conversation died faster than Caleb's voicemail greeting. I didn't say a word. Just washed my hands slowly, dried them, and left. But inside, I was boiling. Because as much as I hated being the subject of gossip, there was one rumor I couldn't shake myself. What if Caleb knew? The first clue didn't come as a phone call, a dramatic confrontation, or a stranger at the door. It came as an envelope. Brown, unmarked, no return address. Slipped between a stack of pizza coupons and a gas bill, like it wasn't about to change everything. I opened it at the kitchen counter, still dressed from work, heels off, hair in a lazy bun. Just another Wednesday night in a house that didn't feel like home anymore. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper. Not handwritten. Not typed on a regular printer. This thing had the cold precision of a document meant to disappear into a filing cabinet labeled "Burn After Reading." At the top, bold and neat, Valerie Mancino, Operation Echo Chamber. What followed were 4 words that pulled the rug out from under me. Subject suspected, Caleb Mancino. I sat down. Not dramatically, not in shock, but because my knees just stopped working. The next few lines listed dates, times, brief surveillance notes. Caleb leaving our house. Caleb arriving at work. Caleb meeting a contact in a public park. One note stood out, underlined in red. Subject obtained a classified document copy on April 11th. Intent to disclose presumed. Now let me pause here. I know what this sounds like. A twist. A curveball. But for me, it was more like déjà vu. Because there are 2 kinds of secrets in a marriage, the ones you know and the ones you suspect. And I'd always suspected Caleb was smarter than he let on. He played the loyal, clean-cut husband role too well. The kind of well that comes from practice, not nature. I used to joke that if Caleb ever cheated, it wouldn't be with a woman. It'd be with a government agency. Turns out I wasn't far off. If this envelope was real, and trust me, it felt real, then my missing husband wasn't a victim. He was a variable. I stared at that sheet for what felt like an hour, letting the weight of it settle in. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It wasn't even about betrayal. It was about something else. Control. Because now I had to ask myself a brutal question. Had Caleb gone missing because of me? I work in a classified facility. We sign papers so thick they might as well be concrete. I've done things in that building that I can't even whisper to myself. I always assumed my affairs, limited though they were, never left the walls. But what if someone inside knew? What if someone used it? I made a call. Not to the police. Not to work. To a guy named Julian. Now, Julian isn't someone you find in the yellow pages. He's not a PI. He's not law enforcement. He's a guy who knows things. A specialist in cleaning up messes no one else is brave or stupid enough to touch. Valerie, he said, voice flat. Didn't expect to hear from you. Don't lie. You always expected. Fair. What's the mess? I need to know if Caleb's alive. There was a pause. You sure you want the answer? No. But I need it. I'll call you in 48 hours. Click. That was Julian. No questions. No morality lectures. Just facts. And probably a small army of drones and databases crawling Caleb's last 72 hours by now. I sat in the dark living room afterward, the paper from the envelope sitting on the coffee table like a coiled snake. My mind replayed every conversation I'd had with Caleb over the past month. Every vague answer. Every missed call. Every time he said, "Don't wait up." He wasn't cheating. He was watching me. Or maybe he was watching them. Or maybe he was preparing to vanish. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, counting all the reasons a man might disappear. Guilt. Fear. Strategy. And if you ask me, Caleb was never the type to run. But he was absolutely the type to plan. The next morning, there was another envelope. Same color. Same shape. Same lack of return address. Inside, one sentence. You are being watched too. If the first envelope rattled me, the second one flipped the chessboard. You are being watched too. It wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. The kind that hums in the walls and flickers behind the lights. The kind that makes you look twice at your toaster like it's a double agent. I didn't call Julian this time. I packed a bag. Not a big one, just enough for a few days. Passport. Burner phone. Cash. The kind of bag you put together when you're not sure if you're being hunted or tested. By noon, I was parked in a library 3 towns over, where the Wi-Fi was free and the cameras weren't connected to anything more sophisticated than a bored college intern. I opened my laptop and started pulling threads. First, Caleb's email. Nothing. His inbox looked like it had been bleached. No sent messages for 3 weeks. Trash folder empty. Drafts blank. Second, his social media. That part was strange. One post. Just one. A photo of a sunrise over the ocean. Caption: everything makes sense when you're quiet long enough. That wasn't Caleb. He didn't do vague. He didn't do poetic. He did numbers, schedules, spreadsheets. I checked the timestamp. It had been posted the morning his car went into the ocean. Was it a farewell? Or a signal? I clicked on the photo and downloaded it. It was just a sunrise, right? But something about it bugged me. Too centered. Too symmetrical. Like it had been framed with intention. Then I saw it. Barely visible in the lower right corner, scratched into the sand, probably by a stick or a finger. Echo 7. Echo chamber. The name from the first envelope. That wasn't a coincidence. It was a breadcrumb. And I was officially off the trail and deep into the woods. I texted Julian. Just the photo. No words. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Julian, that's a classified site designation. Echo 7 was a discontinued satellite uplink project. Scrapped 5 years ago. Shouldn't exist. Me. Then why is it in a sunrise photo? Julian. Because someone wants you to find it. Me. Or they want me to chase shadows. Julian. Either way, they want you moving. He was right. This was movement. But movement for whose benefit? I closed the laptop, stuffed it in my bag, and left the library. The air outside smelled like rain and paranoia. I drove north, just a direction, not a plan, until I found a small roadside diner that looked like the Wi-Fi password was still 12345. I slid into a booth, ordered a coffee, and pulled out my notepad. If Caleb left clues, it wasn't out of guilt. It was out of purpose. That's who he was. Methodical. Strategic. Every move calculated 5 steps ahead. Which meant Echo 7 wasn't just a reference. It was a location. I called in an old favor from a guy in DC who owed me more than one. I need a map overlay, I said. Military grid, 5 years back. Keyword Echo 7. He didn't ask why. Just said, give me 2 hours. While I waited, I stared at the coffee. Cold now. I didn't drink it. My reflection in the window didn't look scared. It looked resolved. Like a woman who had lied expertly for years and was now finally sitting on the receiving end. At 3:17 p.m., my phone lit up. Coordinates received. Coastal site. Decommissioned satellite station. Locked gate. No staff. Perfect. I paid the bill and hit the road again. The coordinates led me down a crumbling side road lined with pine trees and fog. And there it was. A fence. Barbed wire. No signs, no logos, just rust and silence. I parked a quarter-mile away and hiked the rest on foot. The main gate was chained, but a portion of the fence near the cliff edge had been clipped. Clean. Precise. Somebody left a door open. I slipped through, ducking into the tall grass until I reached the main building. It was small, maybe 2 rooms, a shack with a comms array on top, and a broken window on the north wall. Inside, dust and mildew. Shelves once filled with equipment now sat bare. But on the far table, a stack of photos. Me, walking to my car. At the grocery store. In my office. My eyes. My badge. My face in 12 angles. They weren't just watching Caleb. They were watching me. Had been for a while. And underneath those photos, a USB drive, taped to the bottom of the table like a secret waiting to whisper. I took it, slid it into my coat pocket. That's when I heard it. A footstep behind me. Not loud. Not rushed. Just intentional. I turned around slowly. The doorway was empty. But the door? It was now closed. The door was closed, and I hadn't heard it shut. Not the wind. Not an animal. Someone had entered. Quietly. Purposefully. I stepped back, one hand reaching into my coat where the USB drive now lived like a ticking secret. Don't turn around, a voice said. It wasn't threatening. No grit or malice. Just calm, like someone used to being obeyed without needing volume or threats. Who are you? I asked. That depends, the voice said. On what you've already figured out. I've figured out you're trespassing. That you know how to close a door without making a sound. And that you probably know where Caleb is. A pause. Then, he's alive. That landed harder than it should have. Not relief. Not joy. Just validation. The kind that hits after days of pretending you're not hoping for it. Prove it, I said. The voice chuckled. That sounds like something he'd say. Who are you? I asked again, slowly turning toward the doorway. This time, the man didn't stop me. He was average height, dressed in jeans and a dark hoodie, hood down. Late 40s, maybe 50s. Lined face. No beard. Just a face like sandpaper had been his skincare regimen. I'm Michael, he said. Used to work with Caleb. We were in the same agency until we weren't. Agency. I repeated. The one that doesn't exist. The one even your facility doesn't talk about. I studied his face. Why are you here, Michael? To deliver a message. From Caleb? From the people who want to make sure you don't end up like Caleb. A different kind of cold ran through me now. Not fury. Controlled, compressed fury. I'm not scared of threats. It's not a threat, he said, stepping into the dusty room. It's context. They know what Caleb found. They know he was going to you. And they know he trusted you. I reached into my coat. He didn't flinch. I pulled out the USB drive and held it up. This. He nodded. That's the real reason his car's in the ocean. I turned it over in my fingers. So what now? You take this from me? Pretend I never came here? He shook his head. No. I'm not here to steal. I'm here to warn you. Warn me of what? That everyone thinks this is about betrayal. He pointed to the photos of me on the table. But it's not. It's about leverage. And you, Valerie, are leverage. I crossed my arms. You think you know me? He smiled. Not cruelly. Almost, with pity. I know the kind of loyalty that builds behind steel doors and retina scans. I know the kind that isn't about love. It's about utility. I didn't like how close he was to right. What's on the drive? I asked. Enough to burn echo chamber to the ground, he said. Coordinates. Logs. Communications. Caleb didn't just disappear. He leaked a copy of the entire uplink schedule. It's on there. So's the truth about who accessed it. And when. Why would he do that? Because he knew he was being watched. And he knew the moment they confirmed his suspicion, he'd be eliminated. In the drive. His failsafe. If he vanished, someone else, someone he trusted, would find it. Me. I looked at Michael. So I was the insurance policy. He nodded. And now you have to decide what to do with the truth. Why help me? He paused. Because I was once in your position. Only I didn't have anyone to warn me. I watched them erase my sister. Piece by piece. First her job. Then her bank account. Then her name. He stepped back toward the door. And if you're thinking about going to the media, he added, don't. This isn't the kind of story that survives daylight. But you can dismantle it. Quietly. Precisely. He handed me a slip of paper. Use this contact. She'll get you somewhere safe. Off the grid. Then he stopped at the door and turned back. One more thing, he said. There's a reason Caleb never confronted you about your affair. He knew. He just didn't care. That hit me like a brick to the ribs. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. Michael opened the door and walked into the fog. No car. No sound. Just gone. I stood alone in the silence. The USB drive felt heavier now. Like it carried more than just data. It carried a man's last play. And I was holding the game piece he bid his life on. I didn't go straight home. I drove for hours, hard hammering in rhythm with the engine. Caleb knew. He'd known about Doug, my little thrill behind government doors. And he hadn't said a word. Not out of grace. Out of strategy. I checked into a motel under a different name, used cash, and pulled out an old laptop. No Wi-Fi. Just the USB drive in me. I opened it. There were folders named after programs I didn't recognize. Echo, 7, Bypass Protocol, Thermograph, Valentine. Inside were message logs, financial transactions, and redacted files still labeled with code names of people I knew, people high up, people untouchable. And right in the center of it all, my name. There were surveillance logs on me, notes on my clearance level, and worse, predictions. A whole file titled Behavioral Forecast, subject, Valerie Mancino. My routines, my habits, even a psychological profile. They didn't just watch me. They were preparing for me to break. The contact Michael gave me turned out to be a woman named Serena. She worked out of a converted RV parked in a salvage yard that smelled like rust and secrets. You came prepared, she said when I handed her the drive. No, I said. I came cornered. She plugged it into her gear, more screens than I'd ever seen, and began parsing the data. If even half this is real, she muttered, you're not just sitting on a bomb. You're sitting on the button. I asked her if she could trace the source. She pointed to a cluster of entries in the logs. Every upload, every leak, every mirrored backup, it all went through a single access point. One account. She paused. Doug. Of course. Mr. Excitement. My quiet little affair wasn't so quiet after all. He's the leak, I said. Serena shook her head. He's the bait. Turns out, Doug was running interference. Feeding Caleb just enough information to flush him out. And Caleb knew. That meant Caleb had let himself be hunted to trace the hunters. And now they were circling Doug and me. I went back to work the next day, hair pulled back, neutral lipstick, my best poker face. I walked straight into Doug's lab like nothing had changed. "Val," he said, all smiles and oblivion. "You okay? I need to talk to you." "Alone?" He raised an eyebrow. "You sound tense." We went into the data archive room, soundproof and sealed. I shut the door. "Doug," I said, locking eyes with him. "How long have you been spying on me?" He blinked. "What? Don't lie. I've seen the logs, the mirrored uploads, the behavior forecasts. You're the one who fed Caleb just enough to make him run, aren't you?" He didn't answer right away. That told me everything. "I had to," he said finally. "They came to me first, said I could lose everything, or I could help contain the situation. So you used me." "You used me too," he snapped. "Don't pretend this was love. You needed a distraction. I needed a pass. We both got what we wanted." I leaned in. "No, Doug, I didn't get what I wanted. But I'm about to." He looked confused. That's when the door opened again, and 2 federal agents stepped inside. "Serena's doing." I'd sent them the files before I came here. Doug tried to run. He didn't make it to the threshold. I didn't watch him get cuffed. I didn't need to. Because the moment his wrists were secured behind his back, the agency called off the investigation into Caleb. And I finally got a location ping. He was alive. Caleb was hiding in a small cabin in Vermont. Off-grid. Solar-powered. Quiet. I drove up without calling. When I knocked, the door opened slowly. And there he was. Thinner. Beard longer. But those eyes? Still surgical. "Took you long enough," he said. I stepped inside. "You knew I cheated," I said. He nodded. "You knew they'd come after you." He nodded again. "You disappeared to protect me, or to punish me?" He finally spoke. "Neither. I disappeared to stop them. But I knew you'd either break or fight. And if I broke, then I married the wrong woman. And if I fought," his mouth twitched, "then I chose right." We stood in silence. Not forgiving. Not reconciling. Just 2 people who'd seen too much of the wrong side of each other. "I burned them," I said. "Doug, the program. Echo 7. It's gone." He nodded, like that was expected. "But there's one last thing," I said. He turned, and I handed him a folder. Inside was a list. Every name tied to the program. Every handler. Every enabler. He looked at it and smiled for the first time in months. "Looks like we've got work to do."